Hello and welcome. You're watching the Tov Jewish News channel. My guest today is Nogha Arbel, a senior research fellow at the Coohlet Forum. Nogha, great to have you.
Hi, good to be here. Oh God, sorry. I was trying to turn the sound off.
So, Nogha, you are very known for being outspoken about UNRWA and how problematic that organization is. And recently, yesterday, we saw a number of countries stopping to finance UNRWA, from the United States to Germany to Finland, many countries. And I want to ask you, does it mean the end of UNRWA? Will we see it stop being an influential force in Gaza and stop, acting against Israel?
No, not necessarily. All the countries have declared that they are going to be freezing or reconsidering their funding, and it's yet to be seen if that's going to stick. I mean, at the moment, they are considering it because of a specific event. 12 members of UNRWA educational team, if you could even call them that, were proven to be directly responsible for some of the events participate in events of the October 7th massacre. But that is just the tip of a very large iceberg that is the UNRWA support of terror machine. If all that happens is that they delay for a few weeks or even months before they resume funding, then it's going to be a blip on the radar. We need to make sure that this is a first step, not a temporary measure.
So, Nogha, people like me have heard, some bits of information that UNRWA is problematic. Could you please sum up the reasons why UNRWA is a bad faith actor in Gaza and why this actor should stop existing and influencing Gaza?
Well, for one thing, the reason why UNRWA exists is to undermine the legitimacy of the state of Israel. It's one of its declared reasons of existence, actually. I can't for the life of me understand why you need one refugee agency for everyone in the world and a special one just for Palestinians. If they're refugees, they should be handled by the refugee organization. And if they're not refugees, then they don't need aid. Add to that the fact that UNRWA teaches children to hate, specifically to hate Jews, and teaches them to kill Jews, and teaches them to, and I mean that in the most literal way possible. Not only are they teaching them that the best thing that you could do with your life is to die for the cause of killing Jews, they actually have summer camps where they learn how to operate weapons and maneuver and do whatever it is that a soldier does at a very young age. Now, using child soldiers as a crime against humanity that for some reason Hamas and UNRWA have been getting away with for years. UNICEF knows about it and does nothing to stop it. And if those two aren't enough, we have reports coming out of the Gaza Strip saying not a single house or building that UNRWA is responsible for was found without weapons and other means to wreak havoc in Israel and the Gaza Strip. And this is the organization that is there to help the Palestinians. To help them do what exactly? Palestinians need an education, which UNRWA, by the way, does not provide. The level of reading at grade level for 8th graders or 8th grade boys in Judea and Samaria UNRWA schools is 2.3%. 2.3% of 8th grade boys can read at their grade level. UNRWA is not providing these people with an education. It is providing them with a cause to die and very little else. It is hurting Palestinians. It's hurting Israelis. It is perpetuating terror in the region, and it's time that it is retired. It is time that it is retired.
Nogha, how did it come to be that UNRWA, an organization that was supposed to be apolitical, it was just simply supposed to help, people in need, Palestinians in need. How did it come to be so anti-Israel?
UNRWA was created anti-Israel. The reason for its inception and the reason for maintaining it was to challenge the legitimacy of the state of Israel. I can't say it's in the charter because UNRWA technically doesn't even have a charter. But the reason why the Arab states were so adamant about maintaining UNRWA when the UNHCR was created was that they didn't want to have to resettle the refugees. They wanted to use them as yet another means to, basically to stop Israel from winning the War of Independence. They tried to destroy the newly born state of Israel in 1948, and they're using UNRWA to continue on to try. They invented this ridiculous notion of right of return that does not exist for any other refugee in the world, the sole purpose of which is to stop the course of history from taking its natural route. And they have raised generation after generation of people who think the sole purpose for their existence is the destruction of the state of Israel, the only Jewish country in the world. UNRWA was created to destroy Israel. It makes perfect sense that it therefore hates Israel. It is in its inception.
So who should replace UNRWA in the Gaza Strip and in, the Palestinian Authority, whatever we would call that entity, in general? What is the natural successor of UNRWA after it will be eventually, disbanded?
No other community in the world needs a caretaker. I don't understand why the Palestinian community needs one. Well, I think it really is a silly question. Which, by the way, created a situation where Hamas leaders felt that they were exempt from caring for their population because, they're all refugees, so someone else must be responsible to take care of them. Anyone who lives here.
So you think Israel should take care of that?
I think the people who live in Gaza should take care of that. I think the people who live in Gaza should start being responsible for their own lives. And I think the fact that we keep coddling them and babysitting them and providing them with funds just so that they would have more time to go destroy their neighbors is a big problem. I'm not saying Israel won't be responsible for the goings on in the Gaza Strip, quite the opposite. I'm saying Israel will not be taking care of the Palestinians. Israel should be taking care to make sure not abusing their responsibilities to hurt Israelis again. So we should restrict their ability to rearm to zero. There should be strict security controls in place, and they should include everything. They should include complete control over the educational material, and I mean that quite literally. There should be a denazification process where you're no longer allowed to teach your children to hate and to kill and to destroy because it's killing people on both sides. And there should be complete control over the funds that go into the Gaza Strip and how they're being used. And if the Palestinians take responsibility and create rather than destroy, if they build schools and hospitals instead of terror tunnels, then they should have a very nice life. But they will no longer be allowed to abuse aid from anywhere in order to rearm and try to execute the genocide that they've already threatened that they aim to do.
Nogha, as a last question for our interview, I want to ask you about the future. The thing you just talked about, the possibility of Palestinians creating a stable state that will control itself, that will, live a life like any other state, any other healthy state, not a failed state, as we have many of them in the Middle East, but a healthy life. Is that possible? Do you see any situation where a entity, any type of government will be built in the Gaza Strip, which will, form Gaza into a normal state?
Not in the foreseeable future, certainly not for a few decades at least. The problem is that they were giving all of the authority with none of the responsibility, which created an incredibly toxic culture that needs to be uprooted. I don't see it happening very, very quickly. So I don't see how in the foreseeable future there would be a level of independence that you could characterize as a state, even if we were to accept the fact that whatever independence they have will not include an army, because they tend to abuse that to try to kill their neighbors. And I think it's important to remember that national independence is not a human right per se. There are many ways for you to define yourself. You don't need an army for that. And if the sole purpose of your self-definition is to kill your neighbors, then you're not going to get it. It's not the way the world works. It's not the way the world should work. And so what you're going to have is very, very limited. I don't even want to think of it as independence, but maybe autonomy. Sorry?
Self-governance?
Autonomy, yeah, self-governance. And it wouldn't at all be independent in the sense that they won't have access to funds or resources that they can in any way abuse in order to attack either themselves or their neighbors. So the way that it should work is that there will be complete Israeli control over funds, over it. Because the Arab inhabitants of the Gaza Strip should have a choice, and they should be able to choose contractors, and they should be able to choose where they want their schools to be, but they will not have access to any of the resources that they can abuse to reconstruct either the underground tunnels or any other sort of mechanism that will be aimed at hurting somebody else. So there should be strict limitations on how they execute their choice, but it's very important that they actually have it, because as long as they're used to somebody else taking care of their children and of their planning, or actually of their zoning or anything else, they're not going to take the responsibility for their lives, and they're going to have way too much time to plot the next genocide, which is something they really should. They should be weaned off of.
Thank you very much for this interview and for sharing your insight on the situation with UNRWA and with Gaza. Always great to have you.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you also to all of our viewers that saw this interview. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on all of our social media platforms. Thank you again, and have a great day.